This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and today I have on, I'm not even sure where to begin because when I look at your resume of what you've done in your life, Natalie, it's like she's a little bit of everything. So today I have Natalie Nicole Gilbert with us, and we're going to talk about your music. And I see a picture on the back wall of like film strips. So are you into film as well?
I have done a lot of film and TV work. Yes, absolutely. And it's kind of fun to see all those things integrated because ultimately songwriting is storytelling and it plays a part in that, whether the visual is there in a video or film form or not. So it kind of all works together.
So when did you know that this was what you wanted to do in life?
I think I first started songwriting, oddly enough, very young, around the age of 4. I remember just being in the backseat of the car with mom driving and writing a song about a tree that I just kept singing over and over to myself to pass the time during the drive. So I think very early on, it came very instinctually to me. And I was very fortunate that my mother was a professional pianist herself. So even though I maybe didn't necessarily see her writing lyrics because her leaning was really more instrumental, I did see her composing all the time. And she had this lovely gift that so few musicians have, where she could play equally well by ear as she could read sheet music, which, for so many, it's one or the other.
Right.
And she was classically trained, so she could play Rachmaninoff along with the best of them, and did in fact play with Liberace in years past.
Mhm.
So she just had this, wealth of knowledge. She played across genres. So I think for me, it would have been almost odd if I didn't go into music, because all of her friends were like, when are you going to start playing the piano like your mother? And it actually almost developed not a phobia, but like a hesitance in me, because there was that expectation. So I would sometimes, when I was first learning piano and teaching myself, sneak downstairs and play piano in the basement when no one was watching and everyone was busy, because if I messed up, I didn't want anyone to see that I wasn't yet as good as my mother at the ripe old age of 8 years old.
Well, it's funny when you talk about that you were writing songs to some degree when you were 4 years old. It's not unusual for young kids um, to make up lyrics and sing. Um, I remember doing that myself, and but yet it didn't take me the same road that it took you. But obviously, you had that influence with your mom and the music. Um, I know growing up, we had music in our house, but no instruments until my brothers became teenagers and they decided that they needed to play guitar like all the guys did, and they all they could do was strum on the guitar. They never really learned how to play it. Um, so despite this influence from your mom, um, and people asking all along, so when are you going to follow in mom's footsteps? Um, when did you realize that you needed to sort of break away from that and do it a little bit differently?
I think it was really in my teen years. We all kind of think of, when was the first time you were paid to do this? Or,
Yeah.
what are those defining milestones? They're like, okay, this is more than a hobby now. And my first, paid music gig was actually via my mom, who also along the way played for weddings and funerals and all kinds of, parties and events. So she got looped into a wedding and they were looking for a vocalist. So even at the age of 16, she was like, my daughter sings. And it was a little awkward for me because what they asked me to sing was a duet by Aaron Neville and Linda Ronstadt
Oh,
called So Much. And they wanted me to sing alone. They didn't want me to sing it with anybody else. And if you know the song, it's almost sort of written like a dialogue
right.
between two people. So I had to, sort of shift some of the language so that I wasn't claiming I was a man and, all of this. But I think for me, there was something about that first instance that you are paid for something, even if it is a teenager, and it's in a way not so different than being paid to babysit. You kind of understand, like, it's a small exchange. It certainly wasn't a life-changing amount, whatever amount it was. But I think it did sort of put that seed in my mind of, oh, well, I guess people are willing to pay me for this, just like they pay my mom. And within 2 or 3 years, I had picked up the guitar in addition to piano, and I started performing concerts on my own instead of just, whatever sort of performing opportunities I happened into by proxy to my
Right.
musical family. And I did also sing with my sister. You know, sometimes the events that my mom would play for, they would need more than one vocalist. So my sister and I would both sing, and all three of us would sing. So I got very used to the harmonies as well, and being asked to do songs all over the map, you know, for religious ceremonies or, you know, weddings where it's more pop oriented, musicals. So I was just introduced to such a wide breadth of music that I think it also introduced me to every scope of music that was interesting to me. So I really latched onto that.
And what I'm finding sad today, there are a lot of young people out there who believe that there's only one kind of music they want to perform, and they're going to perform it whether you like it or not. My son, in grade school all the way through high school, he was in music performance, loved it, and he really thought that that was going to be, the path he was going to take. Went to college and on a music scholarship and realized, wait a second, I don't want to learn what they're telling me to learn.
Mhm.
I like what I do. And they really took his love for music away because he enjoyed performing. He didn't mind being having somebody critique him and give him ideas on how he could do it better, but he kept saying, "Why do I have to learn music theory? It means nothing to me." Um, and finally, after a year and a half, he dropped out,
Mhm.
and he became a business major instead. And the joke always was, "Well, you're going to go find, a musician, and you're going to, manage his business." And he said, "Never know." But what I'm thinking of what you're saying is that part of the beauty in your voice is that you are willing to go do a religious ceremony. That's performing. It doesn't necessarily mean that's your religion. And then
Right.
you can go out and you can do bebop or maybe even rap because that's what it's called for. So, out of all that, is there one area of music that you really cling to that you really, really like?
I love ballads, full stop, you know, and I think ballads just, they're so rife with emotion, and they so often speak to people in a moment where they really need to be spoken to, or they need to hear somebody else say they're going through the same thing, whether it's a moment of heartbreak or a moment of realization that they're moving on into a new chapter in their life. And I think a lot of times that happens to sort of sit in a pop or jazz or soul area within ballads, though you certainly get it in musical theater too. But I've just always loved that slow paced building key change thing that kind of starts small and then escalates into this really big power vocal thing, because that is one of the songs, I think, one of the song types or genres that most shows that story arc where you start simple, you're uncertain about the future, and then by the end of it, after you've gotten past the bridge into the last chorus, you realize the world is your oyster and anything
Right.
is possible, you know?
So, where do you get your ideas from? I mean, obviously, as a little kid in the back seat, you saw a tree and you started singing about trees. Um, I remember very clearly my son, when we drive down the street, he'd say, "What is that?" And by the time he said that, it was way past us. And we had no idea what he was talking about. So obviously, you were looking and visualizing things, but how does that relate to writing something and actually getting it to be all put together?
I think, you know, like so many songwriters, when I first started writing, probably even when I was 4 years old, I lean into a lot of almost the trap of rhyming and poetry. Not that I don't like those things, and there isn't a great place for that. But I think that's where you get your feet wet. And it's very easy to sort of feel the boundaries and the framework of this has to rhyme. So I'm a little limited in what I can talk about or what words I can choose. But the older I've gotten, the more as I listen to my friends confide in me about issues that they're going through, trials that they're facing with economic trouble, or, one of my friends recently lost her son to cancer. And so I started writing a song about that because we'd had a number of people in our life recently lose someone in a way that they were slowly fading over time. And there are dynamics involved in that kind of loss that are so different to losing something instantaneously, the kind of sort of having to mourn someone while they're still alive, and preparing for their deaths sometimes months, even a year in advance. So I took that and kind of pulled together not only my own experience with some of those losses. My mother passed too, similarly, kind of watching her fade over a number of weeks, but also, kind of leaning into what I see in the environment around me, because, there are some songs that I write for myself that the public may never hear, that are just sort of like almost a mantra, just a little phrase that I'll repeat to myself. But ultimately, the songs that I release publicly and that I put out there for the public are songs that I want to meet them where they are, and to kind of help them realize and resonate with that idea that other people are going through some of these same difficulties. You're not alone in this. And sometimes that's just putting a word and shape to it and helping them recognize, oh, I should give myself a little leeway to recognize this particular process is a little more difficult because my mourning is being extended over such a long period of time, and I can't even officially begin it until they're gone, so I can't expect to be over this in a few weeks or months, and I think just capturing that humanity in whatever way we can is so vital, because that's what the arts are. And that's where the arts, whether it's ballet or ice skating or any of these things, really make people, steal their breath away.
Absolutely. I have a friend who is also a singer-songwriter, um, and he wrote a song that I just cling to, and it's called "I Wish You Enough." And every time I hear the song, it has a totally different meaning. And that's what I love about ballads, because the first time I heard it, I was driving to an assignment, and I looked up in the sky as I'm driving, and all of a sudden the song was about my mother, her wishing me enough, and made me feel very, very good. But then I listened to it a couple days later, and I thought of something else. And I thought, that's what a good song does. It doesn't necessarily keep you stuck. Um, and there are some singer songwriters out there that every time I hear a song that they've written, it's like, oh, okay, I know what that's about. And sometimes I don't even need to listen to it all the way through, because it's like my brain has already captured it. So when you write these ballads and you take on the feelings or the situations that your friends are experiencing, have you ever had any of them feel like you got too close?
I I have had a few friends go, "Oh, that's interesting that you wrote that about the time that I was breaking up with my boyfriend," or like around that time. And I'm very open with them. In fact, most of the time, if something I'm writing is kind of grabbing a piece of somebody else's puzzle, I tend to let them know even while I'm in the middle of drafting it, and while I'm in the early demo recording phases, so that it doesn't catch them by surprise.
Sure.
And I also try to not, like, I don't include the name of somebody. I'm
Sure.
not like writing a tell-all book in my song about somebody else's experience that they might want to keep to themselves. But so far, when I reflect on some of the songs that I've written, I had another friend who lost a child, after she and her husband had been married for a while, her first son. And I wrote a song. I just kind of got stuck thinking about that, even though it hadn't been recent. She told me about it years after it had happened. But I kind of gave the song to them. And I think that was a song that I was like, I don't know, maybe this is too simple. I'm not the world's best guitar player. Maybe this is a little too sparse. But when I gave it to them, they were like, oh, that's so touching. We didn't even, we weren't trying to get, and I was like, no, I know you weren't trying to get me to write a song about it. But it's just struck me as something to write about. And I think her response to that actually made me release it publicly. So sometimes it can kind of go the other way, that they kind of talk me into releasing it when I wouldn't have, maybe on my own.
And that makes a lot of sense. I think most people probably feel like, they're helping out somebody else. And again, their name is not attached to it.
Right.
Um, and to me, that means that there's a real connection between you and those people. And um, that's really important in today's society, because a lot of us don't have those type of connections with each other.
Truly. And in fact, this is kind of funny. This also brings to mind another story. The first time, and this may seem odd to say, that I ever wrote with a dead person. Um, but I had invited a collaboration with somebody that I met online, never met in person, and he had sent me some musical tracks to write against. And at the time, I couldn't really connect with the music loops that he sent me. It was mostly guitar stuff, but it had some kind of funky sound effects in there. And at the time, I was much more acoustically driven. So I was like, I don't know, let me think on it. But then I circled back to it later when I was traveling and some of my instruments were in storage, and I was just digging through old files to try to find something I could put some new lyrics against. And then it really took shape and it was sounding so good. So I emailed it to him. I'm like, hey, sorry, I've been out of touch, but here's the song I wrote. I think you might actually like it. Let me know what you think. Happy to change it. It's not written in stone. And I waited and I waited. And this was back in the days of MySpace, so I'm telling on myself a little bit.
Okay.
But finally, I went to his MySpace page just to see if he had posted any updates. And I saw many of his friends had said, hey, man, I miss you. It's been so long. And as I read through the comments, I began to put together, oh,
Passed on. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And short while later, his wife actually reached out to me and confirmed it and said, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm just now seeing your email. He did pass. But I talked with her and I was like, I will totally respect if you'd prefer that I not release this. If you do like it and you would like me to release it, I'd be happy to release it as a tribute to him and mention,
Right.
show him as a featured artist. And she was totally on board with that and fine. And just recently, I released that, I think back in like 2012 or shortly before then. And just recently, when I put out an alert on my social media that I was signing my latest holiday album or winter album, I heard from somebody with the same last name as them. And they were like, would you sign one for me? How do I go about, is there a way for me to get you to autograph something if I order it online? And I said, oh, I'll be sending them directly. So I'll be happy to sign it for you. What's the name? And then she confided, she was like, actually, I'm the aunt of the baby girl of this young gentleman. So you released a song with my niece's father some
Right.
years ago,
Yeah.
and I would love it to give her your latest CD with your autograph. And it was so touching, like it's been so many years, probably a decade now, really, especially now that there's the turn of the year. So, you don't even think about some of the long lasting impacts or the
Yep.
way that music lives on after somebody who contributed to it passed on. So sometimes that loss is built into the collaborators, not even who the song is about. But it leaves such a legacy that's remembered by people.
That is wonderful. Now, in the bio they sent me, and I have to ask um, for a couple of reasons. Okay. They noted here you're an award winning LA-based LGBTQ singer.
Mm,
Okay. So there once was a time we never would have said that. We would have just said, you're an award winning singer.
totally.
I'm I like seeing that in there
Thank you.
because number one, we do another show that discusses differences, and we all are different, but yet we're all alike.
Absolutely.
And I'm noticing more now that people are, when they're sending me a bio, they are identifying themselves as, I'm a proud Hispanic, I'm a proud brown woman, I belong to the LGBTQ community, whatever it is. And it saddens me that we have to have labels, that we just can't, say, hey, I'm an award winner. But tell me how that has affected your music, or hasn't it affected your music? Because years ago, that would have.
Absolutely. And I think, for many people, especially in more recent years, you're right. I mean, obviously things have thankfully changed over
Yes.
time. But in more recent years, you definitely see, we just had in very recent history, one of the lead country singers come out. And that's a
Yep.
genre where that is much less prevalent, to be sure,
Right.
because of that community. But you also see some people where the public kind of probably knew that they were. And a lot of their lyrics kind of avoided saying he or she. It was just baby and honey, and in kind of, there was an open, vague amalgamation of nouns used in songs. And even, with Melissa Etheridge, I mean, she, as far back as I can remember, is identified as being a lesbian. But when I listen to her music, I don't inherently hear this is definitely a song about two
Right.
women,
Right.
and I think there's, as you say, we are all so much more similar than people realize. And I think there's almost something powerful about having that label, but then people listening to your music and going, oh, well, I don't really hear that changes much. Like when I hear Melissa Etheridge's music, I just hear her talking about breakups and falling in love and the same things that other people talk about, because ultimately, people still have arms and faces, like the dynamics that people think are so different when you apply some of those labels, skin tones and all of that, are not nearly as different as you point out, as people sort of perceive them to be. So I think these days, what's nice is the freedom to be able to say those things in a press release or in a bio, to be able to say, I am part of this community, so that, people know they can speak freely about it. And that sort of takes away some stigma where stigma might still sort of exist. But then it also kind of lets those in the audience know who maybe haven't come out or haven't, maybe they're mixed race and they pass for one thing or another, and they sort of let the public believe what they want to believe without openly stating it. Know that it's okay. This is a safe space. I'm holding the space for you. I'm acknowledging I'm part of this community. And so you're welcome to say the same to me, and you will find acceptance if you do. And I think that's the thing that I like to be a part of, is creating that environment of acceptance.
Well, and it's important that everyone hear that message, because we're judging, and you sort of implied this, that when you listen to um, certain performers, you don't stop and think, you know who who are they, other than, hey, I like that sound, I like the lyrics, I like the beat. I feel right now like I'm on American Bandstand, boy, the dead age me. But when there once was a time that if somebody would have said, have you listened to this Black performer coming from a very white community, I, I may have just said, because I heard the word Black, no, and maybe would have not cared to listen, other than if they would have said, hey, have you heard this song by so and so?
Mm.
And then I would have gone and listened, because that was the generation I grew up in. And I have pulled away from all that, because I'm no better, no different than anybody else.
Right.
And, you know, when I listen to your music, if I hadn't read the bio, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
And and again, it doesn't make any difference, but I want people to know that if you care, if you want to come out and share your background, share where you come from and where you're going, I think that's exceptional. And um, kudos to you. Um, I, and I love your music. So tell me what's coming up. I mean, you're in the process of coming up with something new, or you just released something?
Yes, we have later this month. I have a dance album coming out, and I have often done dance singles here and there, coming from that kind of soulful background and having grown up doing a lot of gospel stuff. R&B and soul is really comfortable for me, but I think my natural inclination, especially when I'm playing an instrument, is to lean into more of the pop stylings or something that's a little more acoustic. But I do love electronica and stuff that's a little more beat driven. And I've been just had my socks blessed off by connecting recently with a new producer whose background is really rich in dance. He's done remixes for Ariana Grande and J-Lo and a bunch of names in the dance scape that I don't even know as well. But he's got a very good sense for what works in clubs and, you know, what all the different kinds of subgenres like tropical house and all this new disco that are totally new terms to me. But it's been a really fun avenue to explore, and all the more because this is a very curious time to release a dance album. As you can probably guess, clubs are closed. In fact, the Billboard dance chart is paused and is offline right now because, you know, with clubs closed, major artists don't even want to release a lot of dance music because it doesn't have an opportunity to really be heard or interacted with the way that it normally would be. But I kind of saw that as an open blank space, because just because dance clubs are closed doesn't mean that we don't still want to dance in our living rooms or,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely. Yeah.
drive a little bit in the car while we're running errands. We still need that upbeat music, and all the more while we're, you know, twiddling our thumbs, waiting for vaccines, waiting for, you know, economies to really fully reopen and for safe spaces to enable us to gather together again. So I felt like that doesn't mean that the dance music should stop.
Right.
We have to find new ways to do it. And, you know, not every track on the album is like peppy in a way that requires, you know, a lot of full-on dancing. Some of it is more of what I would almost call driving music. It's just kind of ethereal and a slow beat, but the beat is still there. And, you know, some of it is about falling in love, and some of it is about heartbreak or, you know, being on the verge of a chapter change. But for me, I just felt like it was the right time to step into that, and not because like the competitors have all fallen away, but just because the audience still needs that, you know. And it was just so fun to do a full collection. It has extended mixes. So, you know, people that are still mixing, doing Zoom parties where you can dance or something, will still have new music to play with, you know.
Well, as you talk about music and dance, that has gotten me through this pandemic. And it's not just, you know, interviewing people like yourself and just sharing your music, but it's my husband and son know that I'm really not a dancer and I really cannot sing. In fact, I had a decent voice years ago, and then I had thyroid surgery, and they accidentally nipped a couple of my vocal cords, and so yeah, so my sound is absolutely terrible. I scare all the animals away, but that doesn't get stop me from wanting to sing in the car, um, or go downstairs in the morning while, you know, my husband and son are still asleep, and, you know, try to dance around the living room. It helps. Number 1, it's an exercise. Number 2, I find when I'm singing, because it doesn't all wanna come out, I have to stretch my throat and my vocal cords, which gives me more oxygen. And so I look at all these things as, you know what, it's fun, but it's also good therapy. And I've shared that with a number of my friends, and they're going, yeah, you know, I close my bedroom door like I did when I was a teenager, and I turn up the music and I dance. And it's like, why not?
Yeah.
So I think your new album will hit a lot of people that, you know, are feeling like, hey, I've got to keep moving, and why not? This is a good time. So what's the name of the album?
It's called Don't Blink, and it has some of my original dance music on it, but I also explore music from some of my favorite artists like Laura Fabian, which is a name a little lesser known here in the States. She's better known up in Canada and in France because she has a lot of French speaking music. But she did have a dance hit here in the States back in, I want to say 2001, called I Will Love Again. And she's continued to make amazing music. So there's a cover of that on there that's really fun, and it has almost like a tribal beat to it.
Ooh.
And then there's also a cover of Demi Lovato and Sabrina Carpenter, who's, you know, both much more in the pop world. And both of them are also very open about some of their struggles and recovery. So some of their songs really talk about self-care and cutting loose toxic relationships. And as you kind of touch on, like stepping away from those old habits that, you know, people tried to shift on us in our youth that we're now rejecting and going, you know what? That's not the person I want to be. Those aren't the rules I want to subscribe to. I want to break out of that box. So, and actually on that note, this is, I almost hesitate to say this is my first album that has a couple of explicit tracks on it. and it's not lyrics that I wrote. And there's a way in which it feels a little funny that just knowing that there will be a couple of tracks that have that E next to them for explicit lyrics. But I also think, as you touch on, times have changed. And I think when it's appropriate, I'm never the sort to throw in stuff like that just to be gratuitous. But when it really makes sense with the message, when you're saying back off, I need a minute, or when you're saying I'm not sorry about being who I am, I think, some of those words can be quite appropriate. So it was kind of another thing that was new for me to try on. And there's a way in which, even in hearing the early demos, when I listen back and I hear myself saying or singing some of those things, I'm like, I said that, but I also acknowledge my fan base has changed over time. My first real catching fire viral moments happened in 2008. And back then my fans were more often, 13, 18, 21. But now I'm getting some of those same fans that have followed me from that time, that I've developed a close relationship with, texting me pictures of their firstborn children and inviting me to come to their weddings. So I know they're not in that same space anymore. I have no illusion in my mind that they're still 12-year-olds. And so I also want my music to kind of meet them where they are as adults.
And it's interesting that you say that, because prior to taping this today, I was doing a podcast, and the name of the podcast is called The Rant. And it's really about equality amongst the ages.
Mm.
And to be equal across our ages, we have to reconnect constantly, with our younger self, our older self, and where we're going in the future. And it's not being stationary and only catering to the people within our same circle all the time.
Yes.
And I got so much more out of today's show because these two women have been lifelong friends since one was 3 and one was 1 year old.
Wow.
Yeah. And, they're in their 50s and 60s now. And it's like they are true friends. And true friends allow us, like you said, when it's necessary, to use an expletive that maybe not part of our normal dialogue. But you know what? It calls for it right now.
Yes.
And we need people, when they hear those words, just take a step back and say, let me understand why it's being used, not being accusatory or expecting you to use it all the time.
Yes. Yeah, that's also true. I think there have definitely been times in my life where if I heard somebody use an expletive every fifth word, it was really a turnoff to me, because that did feel gratuitous. And it frankly felt a little bit lazy, like that was, they didn't have enough adjectives in their vocabulary to reach for something else, but as you say, I think we all evolve, and especially in a time right now, we are going through in our lifetimes, knock on wood, hopefully what will be the worst time, not, a worse time in the future. Economically, we've been looking at people with a 30% unemployment rate, and people being evicted from their homes. And thankfully some, rescue plans are in the works that hopefully will alleviate or slow down some of that so we can rebound. But the kinds of times we're going through, I think, are not the kinds of times to be walking around like a Donna Reed and pretending that everything is rosy. But we have to really acknowledge what the situation is in order to fix it,
Yes.
in order to be part of the solution. So I think there's something in that too, where we just look at things for what they are, so that we can admit, that's not just a bruise, that's a broken bone. And in order to address that, we've got to set the bone and give it time to heal properly.
I love those words. I hear a song coming from all that now. So when does your new album release?
Our release date we just set today is the 25th of February. And it's a 10-track album, lots of extended mixes on there. We will have clean edits releasing of the 2 songs that do have the expletives after the album goes live. So for people that want to play that on the radio, they will have those cuts where the song dips out, the lyrics dip out in those little stretches. But as you say, it's the expletives are kind of sparse. They're not throughout the song. So that makes that a pretty easy job for the producer to edit out. But yeah, coming out later this month, just a few weeks now.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing it. We're looking forward to everyone buying it. Okay. And I can't stress that enough to our listeners. Let's not pirate music, because there are people like Natalie who put in their blood, sweat, and tears. And especially this past year, many of you are not working. Some have been lucky enough to do some Zoom parties and get paid for it, but they're really not getting paid much. It's whatever we put in that tip jar usually. So when this album comes out, we want people to pay for it. And hopefully you'll be out in concert in the near future when things start to reopen. Now you're in California, correct?
Yes, I'm in LA.
Okay. So things are just starting to reopen.
Yes, just this past Friday, we began to have outdoor dining again. And boy, you should have seen how the streets and parking lots were swarmed with people who hadn't been able to eat out in 3 months, just everywhere.
I mean, when they opened things up here in Cleveland, it was midsummer. And then they had to start closing things down because people took advantage of it.
Yes.
And so now things are pretty calm. I pick and choose where I go. There's still a lot of places that I still don't feel comfortable going out, but I've got my vaccine and waiting for my second dose. And, I don't want to be a carrier. I don't want to get it, and I don't want to be a carrier. So
Absolutely.
hope everybody will do their part in it. And we'll have to have you back on after your release.
Oh, that would be a joy. It's so delightful to catch up with you. And I love hearing your thoughts as well. I think it's such a joy to know that hosts are people too. As you might have read in my bio, I used to be a radio host as well. And I think a lot of people sort of forget that, we're all humans. We are all bringing our own background to these things. And that's so vital. We need that now more than ever.
Absolutely. Well, have a great day. Enjoy the nice weather in LA. Well, I enjoy watching it snow.
I'll send you some sunshine. Thank you.
Bye.